I'm Caroline Harper, 36 years old, and I stood in my parents' doorway holding a homemade apple pie and a neatly wrapped box tied with gold ribbon. Christmas carols floated softly through the house, and the smell of roast turkey drifted out into the frosty air. I'd driven 2 hours in the cold, dressed my best hoping, maybe foolishly, that this year things might finally feel different. What I didn't expect was to find myself alone in my car a few hours later, with mascara streaking down my cheeks and my brother's voice echoing in my head, "Why would we waste a seat on you?" It was supposed to be a holiday, a celebration. Instead, it became the moment that cracked everything wide open, and by the time I left, I knew I wasn't coming back. Before I go any further, drop a comment to let me know where you're listening from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood just outside Knoxville, Tennessee. Middle child, older brother named Jason, younger sister named Lily. My parents, Walter and Diane Harper, believed in appearances, kindness, and public order at home, and silence when things got uncomfortable. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect Southern family. Inside, it was a different story. Jason was the one they never said no to. From the time we were kids, everything he touched turned to gold in their eyes. First, it was his science fair trophies, then his football stats, and later his real estate success. Lily the baby was delicate and sweet. My mother doted on her constantly. I was the one in the middle, not rebellious, not needy, just there. I kept my head down, worked hard, and learned early that if I wanted praise, I had to earn it. I built a life for myself, put myself through school, landed a job with a design firm in Nashville, eventually worked my way up to senior architect. My apartment overlooked the park I traveled for conferences, and I even had a piece published in a national magazine about green building practices. But when I brought any of that home, it barely registered. One Thanksgiving, after I'd just closed a major project, the only comment my mother made was about how Jason had bought a lake house. Lily got engaged that year. Everyone toasted with champagne. I was asked to take the group photo. It wasn't just the big things, it was every small moment that told me where I stood. I once brought my college boyfriend home for a long weekend. Jason spent 2 days cracking jokes about me, stories twisted just enough to get a laugh. My boyfriend left me a week later. I found out years later Jason had messaged him directly saying I wasn't emotionally stable. Still, I kept coming back. Every holiday, every birthday dinner, I hoped for something to shift. I brought thoughtful gifts, helped with cleanup, avoided bringing up work since that always seemed to make my mother anxious. I tried to be easy, agreeable, helpful. I figured if I just proved I was worth noticing, they'd finally see me. It was after last Thanksgiving when I went home and sat through 3 hours of Jason showing everyone his new drone footage, while no one asked a single question about my magazine feature, that I decided to talk to someone. Dr. Laura Marshall was the first person who really listened. In her office, I said the words out loud for the first time, "I don't think my family actually sees me." Dr. Marshall suggested space, boundaries, maybe even sitting out a holiday or two, but I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. I told her I wanted to try one more time, to lay everything on the table one way or another, so I started planning. For Christmas, I wrapped each gift with care: a blue scarf for my mother, a first edition book for my dad, a photo album of wedding prep for Lily, and for Jason, something different. Tucked inside that glossy box was a collection of emails, messages, and even an audio recording, proof of what he'd done, of how long he'd worked to turn people against me. And beneath that, a handwritten note, one final attempt to be heard. On Christmas Day, I arrived at 3 Huzzer sharp. My dress was forest green, chosen carefully, hair curled, makeup soft. I checked my reflection in the car mirror before I rang the doorbell. The house was glowing. Lights around the windows, matching wreaths, candles flickering in the entryway. It looked like something out of a magazine, but as soon as the door opened, I saw it in my mother's eyes, that tight smile, the way she stepped aside without a hug. I stepped in pie in one hand, gifts in the other. The warmth in the house didn't reach me. In the living room, my dad was laughing with Jason and our uncles. Lily waved from the corner. Nobody stood to greet me. And when my mother finally said, "Caroline's here," nobody even looked up. That was the moment I realized I had brought more than just gifts. I had brought a truth none of them wanted, and I hadn't even reached the dining room yet. The living room was full of voices and soft music. Jason stood near the fireplace, telling a story to a group of aunts and uncles. They laughed in that familiar way, just a little too hard, just a little too eager. His wife Lindsay rested a hand on his arm and smiled like she always did when he had the floor. My mother moved in and out of the room carrying appetizer trays, giving me a glance once or twice, but saying nothing else. I placed the wrapped boxes carefully under the tree and tried to ease into a conversation. My Aunt Linda was talking about her cruise to Alaska. When she paused, I offered, "That sounds incredible. I've been looking at sustainable travel options for next year." She nodded politely but turned her shoulder, already redirecting the group back to the glaciers. That kept happening. I'd approach someone, ask about their work or comment on their photos, and within seconds the conversation would drift away as if I'd never spoken at all. My mother passed me in the hallway and asked if I'd mind arranging the cheese board. Dinner was scheduled for 5. Around 4:30, I noticed my mother starting to fuss with the dining room. She was particular about the table, always had been. Her best china was already laid out, the cloth napkins folded into Christmas trees, name cards placed at each setting in her delicate handwriting. The center of the table held red roses and pine branches, all arranged in a crystal vase I remembered from childhood. I glanced over the table, counting instinctively. 10 place settings. There were 12 of us in the house. I walked around slowly checking each card. Jason, Lindsay, Lily, and her husband Grant. My parents, my aunts and uncles, Alicia and her new boyfriend. I walked around once more, this time looking for my name. It wasn't there. I found my mother in the kitchen basting the turkey. "Hey," I said as casually as I could, "I think you might have forgotten my place card at the table." She didn't look up. "There's a lot going on today, Caroline. Can you refill the ice bucket?" I nodded and walked away. My hands were steady as I scooped the ice, but there was a weight in my chest I couldn't name. As I stepped back into the hallway, I heard voices, low, hushed. "I don't know why she's making such a fuss," my mother was saying. "She's always off to the side, never really part of things." "She's your daughter," my aunt replied gently. "Can't you just add a chair?" "Walter's back is acting up," my mother sighed. "And Jason asked that we keep things small this year. You know how he feels about Caroline's energy. It's just easier this way." Their voices fell silent when I stepped into view. My mother reached for the ice without meeting my eyes. My aunt gave me a tight smile and turned back toward the living room. I went into the bathroom and shut the door. I stood there for a long minute staring at my reflection under the soft yellow light. My lipstick had worn off. I reapplied it with slow, practiced strokes. Then I took a breath, smoothed down my dress, and left the room. At 5 o'clock sharp, my mother called everyone to the table. The dining room glowed with candlelight. My father sat at one end, my mother at the other. Jason and Lindsay were to his right, the seat of honor. Lily and Grant were near her. Alicia and her boyfriend were placed across from Jason. The rest of the family filled in the gaps. Everyone had a seat, except me. I stood in the doorway, waiting for someone to notice. No one did. My Aunt Linda finally glanced my way, hesitated, then looked down at her napkin. My mother began serving the potatoes like everything was in order. "Mom," I said, just loud enough to carry over the clink of forks and wine glasses, "where should I sit?" The room fell quiet. My mother didn't look up. "The table's full, sweetheart. I figured you could eat in the car just for today." I didn't move. I didn't speak. Then Jason from his seat looked at me with that same crooked smile I remembered from when we were kids. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" he said. Nobody laughed. Nobody gasped. They just went back to their plates. My dad cut a piece of turkey eyes on his food. Lily sat with her hands in her lap, lips pressed together. Alicia shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak. Her boyfriend looked confused, glancing between us. I looked at every single person around that table, memorizing the way they wouldn't meet my eyes. It was quiet now, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that lives deep in the walls, the kind that has been there a long time. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch. From there, I could see the Christmas tree. My gifts sat beneath it, still untouched. One of them, Jason's, was wrapped in silver paper, tied with a blue ribbon. Under his dinner plate, I had placed something else earlier that afternoon. A sealed envelope. Nobody had seen me do it. Nobody ever did notice what I did. Back in the dining room, conversation began to pick up again. Jason was talking about a difficult client, waving his fork as he spoke. My mother refilled a wine glass. My father asked for more rolls. I stood, walked back into the room. The chatter slowed as I stepped toward the tree. I reached down, picked up the silver box, and held it in both hands. Then I walked behind Jason's chair. He turned slightly startled to see me standing there. "I brought something special for you this year," I said. My mother looked up sharply. "Caroline, can this wait until after dinner?" "No," I said. "It can't." I set the box beside his plate. "Go ahead, or just check under your plate." Jason glanced down, reluctant. He lifted the plate and froze. A cream envelope lay underneath. "What is this?" my father asked. "Caroline, what's going on?" I kept my eyes on Jason. "Go ahead, show them, or don't. But you'll know what's in there either way." Jason reached for the envelope with a tight grip, then tried to slide it into his lap. Lindsay leaned in, curious. "What's going on?" she asked him. "Nothing," Jason muttered. "It's messages," I said. "From Jason. Emails to my ex-boyfriend. Texts to our cousins. Voice recordings. It's all in there." Lindsay reached toward the envelope. Jason pulled it back. "You're twisting things again," he said. "You always do this." "Then let them see," I replied. Jason didn't move. I looked across the table. "And there's a copy of Grandma Louise's will, the original one, the one where she left the locket to me." Alicia raised her hand to her chest instinctively. The locket wasn't flashy, just an oval silver pendant, but I had loved it since I was a child. Jason stood suddenly, his chair scraping the floor. "I'm not doing this," he said. "You already did," I told him. "I'm just finished pretending it didn't happen." My father's voice was sharp now. "That's enough, Caroline. This is Christmas dinner." I looked right at him, and I wasn't invited to it, so I thought I'd leave a gift before I go. I nodded toward Jason's plate. "There's a note, too." Jason hesitated, then opened the folded paper. He read silently. His expression didn't change, but his shoulders drew up tight. When he didn't speak, I said it aloud. "This is the last time I will try to make you see me. The last time I will fight for a place in this family. I release you from pretending to care about me, and I release myself from needing your approval." Nobody spoke. I looked around one last time. "Merry Christmas," I said. Then I turned, picked up my coat from the hallway hook, and walked to the door. Snow was falling in light flakes across the lawn. I didn't look back. I drove for almost 20 minutes before I realized I hadn't turned on the heat. The snow had started falling harder light at first, then sticking to the windshield. I pulled into the parking lot of the Parkview Hotel just past 6. It was one of the only places open on Christmas night, a tall brick building with soft white lights lining the roof. Inside the lobby was quiet. A few people sat near the fireplace with books or cups of coffee, but no one looked up. The young woman at the front desk had a red sweater and a name tag that read Bethany. She greeted me like it was any other night. "Just you?" she asked kindly. "Yes," I said, still wearing my green dress, still holding my purse like I didn't quite know what to do with it. "Just me." She nodded and handed over a key card. "Top floor Parkview. The restaurant's serving dinner until 9 if you're hungry." I thanked her and rode the elevator up alone. The room was warm. Neutral carpet, dark wood desk, a king bed with crisp white sheets. I took off my heels and sat on the edge of the bed, letting the silence settle in. My phone buzzed. First it was Lily. "What was in that envelope? Jason's freaking out. Are you okay?" Then my mother called. I didn't answer. Her voicemail came through a minute later. "Caroline, this behavior is completely unacceptable. You ruined Christmas dinner and upset the entire family. Call me back so we can talk about how you're going to apologize to your brother." I deleted it without listening to the rest. My father texted next. "Your mother is very upset. Please call." I turned my phone off. I ordered room service. The hotel Christmas special came on a silver tray: roast turkey, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a slice of pumpkin pie. I ate sitting by the window watching the snow fall over the park. The street lamps made the snow glow gold against the pavement. It wasn't the Christmas I'd planned, but for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next comment, the next silent dismissal, the next sharp turn in a conversation that would leave me sitting in silence. There was no audience to perform for, no role to play. Just a quiet room, a warm meal, and space to breathe. Around 9 o'clock, I turned my phone back on. More missed calls, a handful of texts from cousins and uncles. Then one message came through from Alicia. "Can we talk, not about the locket, about Jason?" I stared at it for a while before responding. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Marcus Cafe." The next morning I woke up early and ordered coffee to the room. I took my journal from my bag and sat by the window. I wrote for half an hour, not just about the dinner, but about everything that had come before it. The holidays where my gifts were passed over. The college graduation where my parents left early. The steady chipping away of what I'd hoped a family was supposed to feel like. Alicia was already at the cafe when I arrived. She was sitting near the window nursing a mug between both hands. The locket was gone from her neck. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "I got your message." She looked nervous, and she didn't jump into it right away. She picked at the corner of a napkin, then said, "After you left, everything kind of blew up. I waited." "Jason tried to throw the envelope away, but Lindsay grabbed it," she said. She read some of it out loud. "The texts, the stuff he said about you." Alicia paused. "He told me you were jealous, that you were obsessed with the locket. He said Grandma changed her mind and told him to give it to me." I said nothing, but the will she stopped, her voice faltering. "That was real, wasn't it?" I nodded. I didn't know she said. I believed him. "All those years I thought you were just distant, cold. But he was feeding all of us these little stories, about you being unstable, about you holding grudges." We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said, "He told Lily that you were making fun of her dress at Beth's wedding. Told Lindsay you said her job wasn't real. I used to think, I don't know, I guess I thought you didn't want us around. He played all of us," I said. She looked up. "Lindsay found other messages. Not just about you, about another woman. She left the house right after Jason stormed out. I didn't respond right away." "She's filing for divorce," Alicia added quietly. I watched the snow fall outside the cafe window, small flakes catching on the glass. We talked for almost 2 hours, unraveled years of miscommunication, years of suspicion. By the time we stood to leave, Alicia reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small black box. She held it out to me. "It was always meant for you," she said. "I'm sorry it took me this long." Inside was Grandma Louise's locket. Back at the hotel, I laid it on the dresser and stared at it for a long time. I hadn't seen it up close in years. I opened it gently. Inside was the tiny photo of Grandma as a young woman, smiling in that calm, familiar way I remembered. Over the next week, my phone kept lighting up. My mother's messages came daily at first. "We can move past this if you just speak to Jason. Families fight. It's what we do. You're overreacting. It was just a misunderstanding." Then silence. My father's messages came less often, but they changed. "I've been thinking about what happened. I didn't speak up. I should have. I'm sorry." Lily called on New Year's Eve. No preamble. "Jason and Lindsay are splitting." She found more messages. "It's a mess. I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "You are." She sounded surprised. "His marriage ending doesn't fix what he did. It's just more loss." She paused. I should have said something. "At dinner, when Mom told you to eat in the car?" "I wanted to. I just didn't." "No," I said. "You didn't." "Can we meet for lunch sometime?" she asked. "I'd like to be a better sister." I told her I'd think about it. A few days later, a card arrived in the mail, handwritten, from Aunt Linda. What happened at Christmas made me look hard at myself. "I've let Jason run the story for too long. I hope someday you'll let me get to know the niece I never truly saw." Not everyone reached out. Some never responded at all. And that was its own kind of answer. But something had shifted, and it wasn't just in them. By mid-January, I'd stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. Messages still trickled in from my mother, though they came less often now. Sometimes they were guilt-laced reminders about how families stick together, other times long paragraphs asking why I was so set on punishing everyone. I didn't respond. My father had sent 2 more texts, both brief. "Thinking of you. I'd like to talk when you're ready." I didn't answer those either. Not yet. Dr. Marshall and I had our first session of the new year the following week. I told her everything Christmas night, the hotel, the envelope, Alicia giving back the locket. She sat quietly while I talked. When I finished, she asked, "And how does it feel now?" I took a moment before I said, "Quiet." She nodded. "Not empty, just quiet." Yes, like something stopped. We talked about patterns, how long I'd tried to hold that family together from my place on the sidelines, how often I'd swallowed things down, not to make peace, but to survive the discomfort of being unwanted. She said, "What you did wasn't a rupture, it was clarity." I wrote that down in my journal later that night. Not a rupture, clarity. The next day, I met Lily for lunch. We chose a small cafe halfway between our places. I wore the silver locket Alicia had returned, and she noticed it as soon as we sat down. She didn't mention it, just looked, then looked away. We made small talk at first. Weatherwork weekend plans. Finally, over soup, she said, "Mom still doesn't get it. She thinks you're doing all this to make a point." I folded my napkin slowly. "I'm not trying to make a point." "I know," she said. "That's what I told her." She looked up, eyes a little glassy. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Not for Jason. That's on him. But I should have spoken up that night, when she told you to eat in the car." I let the words sit for a moment. "Why didn't you?" I asked. She swallowed. "I guess I always assumed someone else would. You were always strong. Always quiet. I thought maybe you were used to it." I looked out the window beside us. A bus rumbled past on the street. I was used to it, I said. That's the problem. When we stood to leave, she touched my arm. I'm glad you didn't let it slide, even if it made things messier. Later that week, Alicia invited me over for dinner. She had 2 lasagnas in the oven, 1 meat, 1 vegetarian. There were candles on the table, a framed photo of Grandma Louise on the sideboard. I've been going through her things, Alicia said as we ate. Old letters, recipes, that wooden box she kept by the window. I found the journal she started in the 60s. There's a whole page about that locket. She wrote that she wanted it to go to someone who understood what it meant to carry something fragile and still stand tall. I didn't say anything, just listened. Alicia glanced up. She meant you, not me. I think she knew. We sat on the couch afterward, flipping through old photo albums. There were pictures of birthday parties, summers at the lake, Christmas mornings from decades ago. There I was always off to the side, smiling, holding a plate, or handing someone a gift. I looked for one, just one, where I was in the middle. There wasn't one. I want to start a family archive, Alicia said. You know, names, dates, stories. Grandma's handwriting. I thought maybe we could work on it together. I nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. That weekend I cleaned my apartment. Really cleaned it. I took down some old framed prints I'd chosen years ago because they were neutral and safe. I boxed up a set of dishes my mother had given me as a housewarming gift, the ones she said were mature enough for company. I replaced them with a bright blue set I'd been eyeing for months. I hung a new painting in the hallway, deep greens, and copper abstract bold. I moved my grandmother's photo to the bookshelf near the window. Then I opened my journal again. You keep trying to win a game that's rigged against you. The only winning move is not to play. That night, I walked through my apartment slowly, room by room, like I was seeing it for the first time. No more waiting for family visits to determine what felt appropriate. No more editing myself to fit a version they'd accept. In the corner of my closet was a stack of old cards, birthday cards, holiday notes, half-hearted apologies. I sat on the floor and read through them one by one. Most were from my mother, a few from my father, none from Jason. At the very bottom was a card from Grandma Louise. The handwriting was familiar. To Caroline, who always brings calm with her presence. Don't let anyone convince you that's not a gift. I tucked that one into my nightstand drawer. By February, I had a new rhythm. Regular sessions with Dr. Marshall, occasional coffee with Lily, weekly calls with Alicia. My father had sent a longer message by then. I failed you. I let Jason shape things because it was easier than standing up to your mother. I told myself it was keeping peace, but I was being a coward. I read it twice, then once more before replying. Thank you for saying that. We made plans to meet the following week. Things weren't fixed, not even close. But they weren't hidden anymore either. And that made all the difference. The first time I invited people over after Christmas, it was just 2 friends from work, Kimberly and her husband Marcus. They brought a bottle of red wine and a loaf of warm bread from the corner bakery. I made a simple dinner roast chicken with lemon herb potatoes and a green salad and set the table with the bright blue dishes I'd bought after boxing up the old ones from my mother. It was nothing fancy. But it was the first meal in a long time where I didn't feel like I was trying to earn my seat. Kimberly stayed behind to help with dishes. We stood side by side at the sink, sleeves pushed up, chatting about an upcoming client presentation. As she dried the last plate, she looked around and said, "Your place feels different lately, like it finally matches you." I nodded, not quite knowing how to respond. Thursday dinners became a thing after that. Sometimes just the 3 of us. Other times we added a 4th chair for someone new. A colleague, a neighbor, a friend from yoga. The table always had room. At work, something shifted too. During design meetings, I started speaking earlier, offering suggestions before being asked. I noticed the way people listened. My boss, Martin, stopped by my office after a pitch one afternoon and said, "I'm seeing more of you these days. Not just your work. You." I thanked him and closed the door behind him with a quiet smile. Michael came into my life not long after that. We met at a sustainability conference in Atlanta. He was on a panel about modular housing systems, and afterward we found ourselves in the same circle during the mixer. He asked what I did, and when I told him, he said, "Then you're probably the one who actually solves the problems we only talk about." We exchanged cards. A week later, he emailed to ask if I'd like to grab lunch. We met at a sandwich place with outdoor seating even though it was cold enough to need coats. He was easy to talk to, calm, thoughtful, the kind of person who actually waited for the answer after asking a question. We didn't talk about family, not then. But when I mentioned the locket I wore, he asked gently, "Was it hers?" "Yes," I said. "It came back to me recently." He didn't ask how. We kept seeing each other. Lunches turned to dinners. Dinners turned to quiet evenings with tea and crossword puzzles. He asked before touching anything in my space. He listened without interrupting. And when I talked about boundaries, he didn't flinch or ask me to explain. By March, my sessions with Dr. Marshall had shifted to every other week. She asked if I felt ready for that kind of space. "I think so," I told her. "I'm not spiraling between visits anymore." "What are you doing instead?" she asked. I paused. "Living, I guess." She smiled. "That's the goal." We spent one session talking about forgiveness. Not the kind people expect with tearful reunions and holidays back to normal. The quiet kind. The kind where you stop giving old pain permission to shape your days. I said, I don't want to hold on to the anger anymore. But I also don't want to pretend it didn't happen. "That's not forgiveness," she said. "That's erasure." We left it there. Back at home, I pulled out a small box from the closet. Inside were the remaining letters and cards from over the years, Mother's Day notes, birthday wishes, scribbled quickly unsigned Christmas cards that said, "Love from all of us." I took them out one by one, then slowly slid them into the shredder. I kept two. One from Grandma Louise, one from my father, the one where he finally admitted he'd failed me. The rest I let go. Lily and I met for coffee once a week. Sometimes we just talked about recipes or the news. Other times we tiptoed into deeper water. She told me she'd started therapy, that she was beginning to see how much being the baby had kept her in a place where she didn't have to speak up, even when she knew something was wrong. Jason made everything about him, she said. But I let it stay that way. We didn't argue. We just let the words settle. My father and I had lunch twice a month, usually at the same booth at a diner halfway between our places. At first it was awkward. He fumbled through small talk, told the same stories more than once, but he showed up, every time. During our third lunch, he set down his coffee and said, "I never knew how to challenge your mother. She could make things feel like a war if she didn't get her way." Jason picked up on that early. He looked across the table, his eyes tired but steady. I didn't want to lose peace in the house, so I let her lead. I thought I was doing the right thing. "What do you think now?" I asked. He sighed. "I think peace that leaves someone out isn't peace at all." I didn't reply, but I reached across and touched his hand. Alicia came by one Saturday with a stack of photo albums and an old shoebox filled with keepsakes. We spent the afternoon building a family archive, dates, stories, names from the backs of photos no one had labeled properly. She took notes. I typed. We listened to jazz and made tea and paused often to laugh or sigh or sit in silence. She showed me a letter from Grandma Louise dated 2 months before she passed. It mentioned the locket again and something else. "Give it to Caroline when the time is right. She'll know what to do with it." We didn't talk about Jason, not that day. My mother sent 2 more messages in April. One was a group text inviting me to Easter brunch. The other a single sentence after I didn't reply. "You're punishing me now, but someday you'll regret keeping this family apart." I didn't answer. Kimberly and Marcus came over that Sunday. We dyed eggs in coffee mugs with food coloring and vinegar just for fun. Kimberly brought deviled eggs. Marcus made waffles. We sat on the balcony afterward and let the afternoon stretch long and easy. It wasn't loud, it wasn't showy, but it felt like home. It was early May when Lily called again. She usually texted first, but this time my phone rang while I was finishing lunch on the balcony. I answered and leaned back in my chair, a notepad still open beside me. She skipped hello. "He moved," she said. I didn't ask who. "Boston," she added. "Packed up last week." Rachel filed the final papers in March. The divorce went through faster than anyone expected. I waited. He's saying he needed a fresh start, telling people the family turned against him. "And are they?" I asked. "Some are quiet," she said, "but they're not defending him, not like before." A breeze lifted the edge of my notepad. I held it down with my hand and stared out at the park. "He called me once," she went on. "Wanted me to pass along a message to you." "What was it that he didn't expect you to forgive him, but he thought you should know he's trying to fix things?" I closed my eyes for a second. "Did you tell him you'd pass it along?" I asked. "I said no," she said. "That if you wanted to talk, you'd reach out yourself." I nodded. "Thank you." After we hung up, I sat with it. I didn't feel rattled. I didn't feel much at all. That surprised me. Dr. Marshall and I talked about it the next day. I told her about the move, the call, the message. "You didn't feel tempted to respond?" she asked. "No," I said. "I felt outside of it, like it's not my story anymore." "Maybe it never was," she said. The next week, my father and I met for lunch at the usual diner. He looked tired but less guarded. He slid into the booth across from me and ordered coffee without looking at the menu. Midway through the meal, he said, "Your mother's having a hard time with how things turned out. I think she expected time to fix it." I didn't respond right away. "She still thinks you should have handled Christmas differently," he said. "But she's not saying it as much now, just sort of holding it." He stirred his coffee, then looked up. "I'm not trying to excuse her," he said. "Just she doesn't know what to do with silence. Yours has been louder than anything you could have said." I looked across the table. "That silence wasn't meant to hurt her." "I know," he said, "but it made her see things we should have seen a long time ago." I folded my napkin in my lap. "She still hasn't apologized." "No," he said, "she hasn't." Back at home, I found another card in the mail. My name in familiar cursive, the envelope sealed with her usual floral sticker. Inside the message read, "I'm sorry if you felt left out at Christmas. That was never my intention." I held the card for a moment, then set it on the counter without finishing it. Michael came over that evening. We made pasta from scratch and listened to records while the dough rested. I told him about the card, the lunch with my father, Jason's move. He didn't interrupt, just listened, drying dishes while I talked. Later, when we sat on the couch with tea, he asked, "Do you want her to try again?" I didn't answer right away. "I want her to understand," I said. "I don't think she does." He nodded. "I don't know if she will," I added. He leaned back against the cushions. "Would it change anything if she did?" "I'm not sure." In June, Alicia invited me to a family cookout at her place. A small group, just her partner, a few cousins, Lily and Grant, my father. I said yes. When I arrived, she was already out back, setting up folding chairs under string lights. A picnic table held bowls of potato salad and deviled eggs. A pitcher of lemonade sweated on the edge. "You came," she said, smiling. I smiled back. People greeted me warmly, not overly so, but with a kind of steadiness that felt different than before. There was space for me this time, not just physically, but in the way people made room in their conversations. My father pulled up a chair beside me while we ate. He looked around the yard and said, "Feels different, doesn't it?" "It does." He nodded. "I think people are trying now, at least the ones who stayed. After dinner, Alicia brought out a photo album. She opened it to a page with a picture of Grandma Louise Young and smiling, standing beside a tree in bloom. "We found the original," she said, "the one you had a copy of in your envelope." I traced the edge of the photo with my finger. "I'd like to scan these," I said. "Preserve them before they fade." "We can do it together," Alicia said. "Make a digital archive, label everything." I glanced up. "You're not worried people won't want that?" She shrugged. "They'll either join us or they won't, but this way we won't lose the stories." That night I walked home under a soft June sky, the kind that holds light longer than it should. I passed a neighbor pruning roses near her porch. We nodded at each other. I kept walking, the air warm around my arms. Back in my apartment, I poured a glass of water and opened the journal on my desk. I wrote a single sentence: "I am no longer holding a place for anyone unwilling to meet me there." Then I folded the page closed and stood at the window watching the last light fade. By midsummer, things in my life had settled into a rhythm I hadn't expected but quietly welcomed. I still met with my father every couple of weeks, usually at the same booth, with the same waitress who had started remembering our order. Our conversations weren't always deep, but they were honest. We didn't circle the past like we used to. Instead, we met it where it stood. One Tuesday afternoon, we sat with coffee cooling between us. He said, "Your mother asked if I thought you'd come around by the holidays." I didn't respond right away. I told her I didn't know, but I also told her you had every reason not to. He picked up his spoon and stirred his coffee slowly, even though he hadn't added anything. "I let her believe you were the problem for a long time. I didn't fight that, even when I knew it wasn't true." He looked up. "I don't expect that to be forgiven, Caroline. But I want to keep showing up, if you'll let me." I folded my hands in my lap. "You've been showing up," I said. "That's what matters." He nodded once, then looked down again. "It's not the way I imagined it all going. It rarely is." Back at home, I opened my journal that night and added a line to the bottom of the last page I'd written. Accountability sounds like, "I was wrong," not, "You misunderstood me." Later that week, Lily and I met for a walk at Radnor Lake. It was hot but shaded under the trees. We kept a slow pace, water bottles in hand. "I talked to Mom," she said, as we crossed a wooden bridge. I glanced over, waiting. "She asked if I thought you'd forgive her. I told her I didn't think that was the point anymore." We stopped at a bench and sat down. "She says she doesn't know how to fix it," Lily continued. "But it also kind of sounds like she's waiting for someone else to make the first move." I looked out at the water, still and bright beneath the canopy above. "I think she's waiting for time to make the move for her," I said. "But time only fixes what people are willing to face." Lily didn't argue. She just sat beside me, quiet and present. 4th of July came, and for the first time I hosted. Just a small group, Kimberly and Marcus Alicia, and her partner Lily and Grant, my father. I made a peach cobbler using Grandma Louise's recipe. Alicia brought fresh corn salad, and we ate with paper plates in hand, music playing low through the speakers by the balcony door. We took turns sharing one memory of summers past, no pressure, just stories as they came. My father talked about building kites with us when we were little. Lily shared a story about the fireworks that nearly singed her bangs when she was 13. When it was my turn, I said Grandma's porch. I remember shelling peas while she hummed. Alicia smiled. She always had music going, even when it was just her. After dessert, I sat with my father under the string lights. He glanced around the apartment, then said, "You've built something here." I followed his eyes. The deep teal walls, the gold-framed photos, the locket resting quietly on the bookshelf beside the picture of Grandma. "It feels like mine now," I said. He nodded. "I can see that." A few days later, my mother sent another message, shorter this time. "I'd like to talk. Not to defend myself, just to listen." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply that day. The next afternoon, I forwarded the message to Dr. Marshall and asked if we could spend our next session discussing what that conversation might look like, what I needed to prepare for what I didn't have to tolerate, what boundaries could stay in place regardless of outcome. She wrote back within the hour, "Absolutely. And thank you for not rushing this. That session was different. We didn't talk about the past. We talked about what I wanted now. Not from her or from Jason or from anyone else in the family, but from my life, my peace, my home, my place in the world. You've been waiting for someone to give you permission to stop trying," Dr. Marshall said. "I think I already stopped," I said. She smiled. "Now you're just learning how to stand where you landed." 2 weeks later, I heard from Aunt Linda again, a handwritten card, no return address. Inside she wrote, "I've watched you carry yourself through this year with grace. I used to think strength looked like silence, but I think you've shown all of us that strength can also be the truth spoken calmly, even when no one's ready to hear it." She included a recipe for cornbread and a photo I'd never seen before me, at 10 years old, sitting at Grandma Louise's kitchen table, grinning with flour on my cheeks. I slipped the photo into my archive folder and copied the recipe into my journal. In early August, Alicia and I met at the public library downtown to scan old family photos. We labeled them by hand, writing names and dates in pencil before uploading them into folders. "This is the first time in years our stories haven't gone through Jason first," she said, her voice low. "I know." She scanned a photo of Grandma in her garden. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" "I think he'll do what suits him," I said. "But the door looks different now. I don't think it opens the same way anymore." We packed up the albums and walked out into the bright afternoon. The heat hit hard, but there was a breeze. She looked over at me and asked, "What do you want to do with all this when we're finished?" "Share it," I said, "with the ones who stayed." We didn't need to say who that meant. 6 months after that Christmas dinner, I stood in my apartment just after sunrise, barefoot on the cool kitchen tile, holding a mug of coffee, while the light filtered through the curtains. The room felt full, even in silence. The walls were no longer safe beige. I'd painted them a deep, steady blue. My grandmother's photo rested above the bookshelf, and the locket, hers now mine again, hung from a small hook beside it. I kept it there most days, not hidden away, but not always worn. Just present, like her. In the hallway, I'd framed a photo from the 4th of July gathering. Lily had caught it, everyone on the balcony laughing mid-conversation, heads turned drinks in hand. You could see the string lights glowing softly above us. You could see how at ease we were. That photo hangs where I once kept a mirror. Kimberly and Marcus still came by on Thursdays. Alicia texted me regularly pictures of new scans, bits of family history recipes, and Grandma's handwriting. My father had started bringing books to our lunches. We traded them back and forth now. It was quiet. It was slow. But it was something. I hadn't seen my mother since December. She reached out once more in early September. A letter this time. Not an apology, not really. Just a few lines about the garden and how the hydrangeas had finally bloomed. I read it twice. Then I placed it in a drawer beside the others, not to revisit, just to know it had come. That weekend, Michael and I took a drive into the mountains. The leaves were starting to turn just barely, reds at the tips, gold near the edges. We pulled off at a quiet overlook, stood for a while without speaking, just watching the clouds move. He slipped his hand into mine. "You've come a long way," he said, looking out across the valley. I nodded. "I didn't know it could feel like this," I said, "to be still and not afraid of it." Back home, I opened my journal and wrote one last line for the season. Family is not where you're seated. It's who pulls up a chair when you need one. I used to think healing meant going back fixing what broke, smoothing it over. Now I understand it means creating something new, not perfect, not polished, but honest, built piece by piece from truth, trust, and time. I don't need a chair at every table anymore. I've built one of my own, and everyone who sits at it by blood or by choice knows there's no cost to being seen here. No silence expected, no love withheld, just a place and a light that stays on. If you've ever had to walk away from the family you were born into just to protect your peace, know that you're not alone. And if you've built something better with your own hands and heart, I hope you'll share your story in the comments. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for listening.